Good evening. How are you guys doing today? Well, I am feeling I'm trying to get this camera straight. Much better today. I still have my cough, but it's not as bad as it was. Well, I should say it's not as often as it was that I'm coughing. But I woke up today and I felt very rested and got up, got my coffee, did my prayers and meditations. Well, I did my prayers and meditations first. Then I went and got my coffee, and ooh, this seat warmer is hot. And then I came home and I filmed a bunch of videos, and then Alex came home, and then I went and got Tanya for our meeting tonight, which was really a good meeting. And yeah, it was just a good day. I'm starting to finally, I can feel myself coming out of the sickness, which is nice. It was 55, I think, 55 last night while I was vlogging, and tonight it is 29 degrees. So it is like 20 degrees, 25 degrees colder. It is really cold outside, and it is super windy out. Like stuff flying across the road, windy. Oh, look at the sky over there. You can see it's pretty. So anyway, yeah, that was the day. I still had to kind of force myself to like get going and do some stuff, but it wasn't as hard as it was the last couple days. I think I'm ready to, like, you know, obviously feel better and move on. Thank you guys for all of your kind thoughts, by the way, and all the kind comments you guys left me about getting better. I really appreciate it. So yeah, that was that. And I kind of at the last minute, I was going through Starbucks today. This is kind of how my review for my review channel went yesterday too. I went through Starbucks today, and as I was driving through, I saw the sign for, they have a new drink called the Cinnamon Shortbread Latte and the Cinnamon Shortbread Frappuccino. The latte didn't taste a whole lot different to me than any other latte. Now, a lot of people in the comment section seem to believe that that was because I drank the Frappuccino first, and maybe it would have made a difference, and it might have, I don't know. Next time I will switch it up and do it the other way around. But the Frappuccino was absolutely delicious. It was so good. So, yeah, so you should go try that out, and you should go check out my review, by the way, because I like doing those reviews. I'm having so much fun with that channel. It's like every day I come up with just like something new and random to do, and yeah, it's really fun because like stuff that I want to try that I wouldn't like normally, like I wouldn't normally try that Frappuccino. Like even if I saw it, I'd be like, oh, I wonder what that's like, and then I would drive through and I would just get my normal coffee. So the fact that like I'm trying that stuff, you know, it's fun for me to try other stuff. I love that channel. That channel I'm having so much fun with. So anyway, yeah, I did an extraordinarily long Peterisms video today. It was like 20 minutes. Oh my God, you know what I did? Okay, so, so I have 2 memory cards, and usually one of them I just keep for my vlog, but like when I'm not vlogging throughout the day, I keep the cards right next to each other on my desk, and then I kind of go back and forth. Like if I'm uploading like one video, like I'll put the other memory card in while I'm uploading it and go back and forth. Stupid. So today, I did like a 16-17 minute booktube haul video where I showed all these new books I had bought. At length discussed all the new Audible books that I had bought like in the last month. It was forever long, and I really had a fun time doing it. But I was, at the time, okay, so I did a video for my Peter Mon channel, but once I was uploading it, I realized I hadn't like inserted like the screenshots of the tweets and stuff, so I had to go back and insert those and re-render it. And then I had my memory card for my Peterisms channel. It was sitting right there. And while I was doing that, I filmed my booktube video. So when I came back, I don't know, somehow it got all messed up, but I deleted my booktube video to go film the review video at Starbucks. And then when I came back, I was like gonna refilm it, but by that point Alex was home and he was reheating his like leftovers for dinner. And he was just kind of wanting to relax, and I had already taken down like all of the lights and stuff, and I was getting ready to go to my meeting. I was like, I'll just make this video tomorrow. Ooh, the seat got real hot real quick. So I was kind of frustrated with that, but other than that. And then on my Peterisms video, I filmed a super long video today. I did like 2 different meditations, and they were both really, really good for me. One was about like believing in yourself and being worthy. A lot of them are about that come from Codependent No More. But it was kind of like embracing the parts of yourself that you don't necessarily love, if that makes sense. And then the other one was about allowing yourself to be emotionally vulnerable. And it's interesting because like over the course of like the last, I don't know, I would say week, I've gotten several messages from people asking me to do videos on how to set boundaries with toxic family members. And I've done quite a few videos on my Peterisms channel about that, you know, and obviously, I mean, it's all based on my personal experience, right? So, but I was thinking about that today, you know, in regards to being like emotionally vulnerable, because I think when you talk about like being emotionally vulnerable, but at the same time, like setting healthy boundaries and limits with emotionally toxic family members or friends, like it's hard, you know? I would say like, you know, with my friends that are emotionally toxic, well, I think toxic is an extreme word, honestly. Like, I don't choose to have lots of toxic people in my life today. And I guess what I mean by toxic is people that are, they're dangerous to our mental state on a daily basis. Like, they're not healthy for us. They bring in a lot of chaos, a lot of negativity, self-questioning, self-doubt, things like that. Like, I don't think it's healthy to have people like that. I think, you know, that today I would rather have fewer people in my life than have people that I have to question the friendships and the relationships with. Back in the day, it was important for me to have a quantity of people surrounding me. Today, I'm fine having, you know, one close friend, or, you know, even feeling rather alone at times, than having to question where I stand with people. And that's something that's taken me 20 years to really kind of learn, you know, and I think that by nature, human beings want to have friends and have people around us, you know, but at the same time, like, so as far as like, I would say like friends in my life, like people that I associate with on a regular basis for, you know, fun, like I don't choose to have a lot of toxic people in my life. And that doesn't mean that like if I have a friend that I consider somewhat toxic, that I just get them out of my life right away. It just means that like, you know, I think over time the friendship kind of just like wanes, you know, it kind of like goes away a little bit, or like I find myself not doing as much stuff with them and vice versa, you know. Oh, please don't fall. I think it's important too, you know, that like you have to ask yourself, are you the toxic person in a relationship sometimes? Like, there has been situations, there have definitely been times in my life when I've been like very, very negative and very down, and, you know, just constantly picking apart other people and putting other people down and things like that. Like, I don't feel like I've been like that in quite some time, but there's been parts of my life that I've been like that, you know, and lacking a lot of positivity. I think I wouldn't have wanted everybody around me. You know, like, I can remember, like, I've talked about this before, you know, that, like, Alex really, really wanted me to start working on being more positive on a daily basis. And, you know, what was so interesting was, well, first of all, I never really deemed myself as that negative a person. That was also a period of my life when I wasn't going to meetings. I had no emotional sobriety. And I just was, I think my outlook on the world was very negative. Was during that time. And, you know, then when I came back into the rooms of recovery, was around the same time that I made a commitment that I was going to work on being more positive on a daily basis. And I believe that you can change any kind of habit or any kind of feeling about yourself, you know, over a period of time, like 21 days is I think what they say with changing a habit. Now, I don't know if it's specific to 21 days, but I do believe that if you start working on yourself and you know, it was just a change of perspective for me. It was a change of how I looked at the world. And I had to make, you know, a conscious effort of looking at the world instead of as the glass is half empty as half full, you know, and I had to realize the things I was grateful for. If you watch my videos, you know that like I am so big on talking about gratitude on a daily basis. That was a tool that I had back there. I just didn't utilize it. That was something that I, you know, knew that was important in my life, but I just didn't utilize it. I just didn't talk a lot about gratitude. You know, I think I talked a lot about what I didn't have compared to what I did have. And, you know, it was interesting. It wasn't easy, but it was interesting how quickly that changed for me. Where, I'm gonna turn around, how quickly I could start seeing things from a positive point of view, you know? How quickly, and I don't know, I think like, you know, I think for me, some of it, and I'm not making excuses, but I think it was somewhat of a lingering effect of my mom passing away, and me kind of like indirectly having this, I don't know, this kind of like resentment maybe at God a little bit, like, why did you take away the one person that was so close to me, if that makes sense? And I think we get stuck in that sometimes, like, you know, like, and I don't know, and I think I look back at that now and I think that that's kind of foolish, but that's kind of how I felt, you know, and I just was negative and sad, and it was always about, you know, I had it worse than everybody else, when in reality, when I looked at the situation, I realized I had it pretty good compared to a lot of other people, you know, most other people. And so things started changing for me rather rapidly, and I also think that when you focus on, at least for me, this is my experience, when I started focusing on the positives of the world, and I started focusing on like how enjoyable life was when you looked at it through positive eyes. Like, I almost think it becomes a language to complain and to complain about things constantly and pick things apart. I think it becomes like a language. Like, do you have that like one friend that like you just always talk with, and whenever you talk with, it's just always kind of like picking stuff apart and, you know, complaining and gossiping and whatever? Well, you know, like Tanya and I talk a lot about this. Back in the day, like when there was a group of us, we did a lot of that, you know, between each other and stuff. And now that it's just Tanya and I mean, who are you going to gossip about? The other person sitting across from you? You know what I mean? There just isn't that. And we talk about how nice it is that there's no chaos. There's no, you know, sure, our lives are not like as packed with conversation and dialogue as we had back then, but we do okay. And the lack of negativity and the lack of like toxicity, it's serene, you know? And I wouldn't go back to how it was before, ever. In that regard, it's like, you know, I don't know, I just think that, like, we had a lot of friends that, and not just friends that were sober either, but we had a lot of friends that were, just came with a lot of drama, you know, relationship drama, and they were always talking about it and in and out of relationships, and, you know, and then, like, you become very consumed with that drama, and, you know, then somebody else's drama, and it's just like, it's constantly all of that, you know, and it's not that anymore. And I don't know, like, now that I just don't really have a lot of that in my life anymore, because I just don't have a lot of people like that in my life anymore, because I just, you know, my circle is very small today. But I'm okay with that as well. I think also, like, you know, Tanya says this one thing that I love, and she'll say, you know, like, if I'm sitting in a room and she says, and I look around and I think everybody in that room is a bitch, I need to take a look at who the real bitch is. Because, like, if I'm thinking everybody else is, it's probably me, right? And, you know, I think there's so much truth to that. Like, and I think being in recovery allows you to really do a lot of self-evaluation and kind of like figure out, like, okay, well, what about me do I need to work on? And, but, you know, when I turned it around and started focusing on really, really being positive, because I didn't want my husband to think of me that way, you know? It changed in me very, very quickly. Very quickly. And I think what I realized was how easy it is, you know, to be positive. I see so much negativity sometimes, you know, and I think to myself, like, and I, like I said, engaged in it at times in my life, but it really weighs heavy on your heart, you know, like, it really, I think, affects us more, that kind of negative outlook on the world, even if it's just fun, you know, at the time. So I don't know, but I think that, you know, it was an interesting question that I got about, that got way off topic, didn't it? You know, I just think it's important, like, when we want to talk about, like, you know, removing negativity and toxicity in our lives, I think the first thing you have to ask yourself is, what can I do to improve it from my end? Like, am I part of that? Like, is any part of what's going on me? Like, because if I can, at first I have to fix what I can fix from my point of view. Does that make sense? Like, I can't, like, always be pointing the finger and saying, it's their fault, they did this to me, whatever. Like, I'm nobody's victim today, I'm nobody's martyr. So, you know, like, it's important for me to first of all look and see, well, what can I do to fix me? What can I do to fix the situation from my point of view? You know what I mean? Where's my responsibility in this? What is my part as, you know, a friend, a family member, a romantic partner, or whatever? Like, what do I need to do? And then after I've done that, then maybe I can evaluate, do I need to set up some realistic boundaries? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? You know? I think back in the day when I lacked emotional development, it was real easy for me just to blame everybody else and what they had done to me. But then like that became a pattern in my life that, you know, like I just, with each ending of a relationship, I would just blame somebody. And what I had to realize after a certain point was that I had a part in all of that. You know what I mean? And today, like, I want to fix what I can fix. And if I have any kind of part in that or control in that, I want to fix that. I mean, don't you? Don't you want to fix what you're capable of fixing? So I always take a look at myself first and say, you know, like, what am I doing and things like that. And, like, you know, I had a family member of mine, and I wouldn't say we're super close anymore, but we used to be really close. And it's not anybody that I've ever talked about in my videos. But I had super, super high expectations for this person. And she kind of always just fell short of my expectations. And do I love her? Absolutely. I will always be there for her, you know. But this is a distant family member. But, you know, over time, it was like, and I've had this with several family members where I've had to, like, my part in that is to A, be the best family member that I can be, or best loving person to them. C, realize that, you know, I'm not always where somebody is. Like, I'm not always where somebody is at. Does that make sense? Like, you know, just because I'm having a great day doesn't mean that everybody else is going to be having a great day. And just because I'm having a shit day doesn't mean that everybody else should have a shit day. So I can't, you know, expect that the world's going to match me where I'm at. You know what I mean? Like, that's a pretty inflated expectation, that I'm going to expect that the world's going to meet me where I'm at, you know? And I think, like, as far as, like, toxic family members, I think setting, you know, realistic expectations and realizing that if we're deeming them or defining them as toxic, the reality is that they're probably sick. Like, they probably need help in some area that they're not getting, you know, and we have to kind of treat them like as such. You know, it's interesting because I'm watching An Innocent Man on Netflix. This is how I make sense of the world, right? Okay, so I'm going to use it as an example. But if you've watched it in there, like, this isn't going to ruin it for you. I mean, it's very, very interesting, but I'm going into the 4th episode. One of the things they talk about in there is that one of these men that is accused of killing somebody, like, he has severe, like, mental health issues, right? Well, like, he has a court case, like a check cashing case, and they allow the mental health issue to come up during that he's not able to stand trial. But when it comes for him standing trial for a murder, it's like they won't bring it up. And, you know, I was thinking about that today, like in regards to like people that we have issues with that have mental health issues, whether it's an addiction or whatever it is. You know, it's like we know that some people don't have the capacity to have healthy relationships, and so we'll make excuses for them, right? And we'll say, well, this, or well, that, or whatever. But when it comes to us, it's like we completely forget all that stuff, right? Like, we make excuses for them in every other area of their lives because they're our family members, and we love them, right? But at the same time, it's like when it comes to us, it's different, right? Well, no, that's not fair. It's not fair to them, and it sure as shit isn't fair to us. I don't know, it's hard, you know? And then if you have family members that are healthy, I think, like, one of the big things is, I don't know, I've had to take space from a lot of people in my life at times. You know, even my mom, I had to take space from, even in sobriety, you know? You know, I paint this picture like my mom and I both got sober and then it just was like, you know, cherries, rainbows, and balloons all the time. That was not the case. There were struggle periods, especially, I would say, in the early years, not so much in the later years. But in the first couple years, you know, there was some periods where we just really, like, we struggled, you know? Like, I had a lot of resentment, and she had a lot of fear. I had a lot of resentment over her past behaviors, you know? And I wouldn't say my mom ever had this attitude of, like, getting sober and then, like, forget everything I did. Like, that was not her, like, that was not her way of thinking. But a little bit, I mean, she would say, you know, we would, like, talk about stuff and she'd say, I don't want to talk about this right now, you know, like, and I think until we were able to, like, sit down and actually talk about some of those things that bothered me and talk them through to where I didn't need to talk about them anymore, which is kind of an immense process, you know, like, only then were we able to move on. But, like, in her defense, it was so hard for her to talk about that because she didn't want to think of herself as a mom that way, you know? Like, she didn't want to look at those ugly pieces of herself as a mom. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, in like any relationship, we have to first take a look at our part in it and ourselves, you know? Like, had my mom, like, done the work first to look at her part, well, we could have had that conversation years before, you know? I mean, I'm talking, it was years before we really had a real conversation about it, you know? And, I mean, I remember at one point, I don't know how, well, my old roommate and I, she and I used to live together. We used to go over there, my ex, my very first boyfriend, we would go over to my mom's, like, the condo that I live in now. It's so funny when I think about this. We would rollerblade in the neighborhood, and then, like, we would all go swimming, my mom too. We would go swimming in the pool, because the pool was, like, open 24 hours back then. It's not anymore. But we would go swimming, like, late at night, and we would play games in the pool. My mom was always that person. I don't care how old she was. In her 50s, she was swimming in a pool. She loved it. In her 60s, she was swimming in a pool. She was always that, you know, like, a kid forever. She loved to swim and be fun and play games and all that kind of stuff. So we would go over there and, you know, we would, like, so I don't know when it was, but there was a period of time when there was about 3 or 4 months. It was not my first year, because that first year when I got sober before my mom did, I didn't see her for 6 months. I was told to, you know, change people, places, and things, and I told my mom that, and she was one of those people for me. That was a real trigger. And she really had a hard time accepting that. Where am I at on time? Oh my God, it's gonna stop here in just a couple seconds. But anyway, I think that was really, really hard for her, you know, that first year of mine, like, before she got sober. But I also know that that had nothing to do with her getting sober, you know, like, she got sober because of my uncle. Okay, it stopped. She got sober because of my uncle having a heart attack. It didn't have anything to do with, you know, my sobriety or me saying that I couldn't have a relationship with her. It had absolutely nothing to do with that. So, but then after that, I don't know, like, you know, it's interesting, the question of, like, how do you set boundaries with toxic family members? Because I would say that at different points in my mom's sobriety even, which is really, I mean, I remember the stories from when I'm growing up, but it doesn't feel as real to me. I don't know if this even makes any sense. It doesn't feel as real to me as, like, when she got sober. Like, I feel like that's kind of when my mom came alive for me as far as us having a relationship. But, like, it's kind of toasty in here. like, I remember there being periods where, like, when she wouldn't want to talk about that stuff, I can remember saying to her, fine, until you're ready to talk about some of this stuff, Mom, like, I don't really have a whole lot to say. Like, it's really hard for me. Like, I need to have some freedom from this, you know? And that and also knowing the recovery piece to it, I didn't feel like that should be on her time schedule. I felt like that should be on mine. Like, I didn't think it was her right to kind of hold that over my head. Like, well, when you're ready to discuss it, okay, like, no, like, I'm the one that was, like, harmed by that. Like, I feel that you should talk about it when I'm ready to talk about it. And, you know, what I know now in retrospect was, had she had that conversation with me when I forced it, it probably, like, she hadn't inventoried it enough to really understand her part in it. Like, sure, she understood that she wasn't the mother that she wanted to be, but on how that affected me on a certain level, I don't think she really understood that, you know? And we were able to later talk a lot about, you know, like, my mom had huge abandonment issues because her father had died when she was 4. Well, I as well had abandonment issues because of my mother's alcoholism. And they were similar in some ways. Well, imagine that conversation, okay? That's a healthy conversation. You want to talk about a healing conversation is when my mom could own the fact that she had abandoned me on some level because of her drinking. Not that she left for 4 and 5 days at a time because she didn't, but because she was absent-minded when I was around. I didn't know, like, when she was there, when she wasn't there, you know what I mean? As a kid. So she could get it. She could get it on that level, and she could understand, you know, like, well, you know, like, now I know where Peter's coming from. I know why he feels this way. And, you know, like, that was, like, I think when things changed for us. I think also, and I've told this story, like, on multiple occasions on my Peterisms video, and I think on here too, videos, and on here too. You know, when I looked at my mom, and I don't even remember when this was, but she was like, you never, you know, come to visit me very often. I'm very sad, and, you know, I'm lonely. You guys, can you hear this wind outside? It's crazy. And I'm lonely, and I just don't have a lot of people. And I just looked at her, and I was so worn out. I think it was when I was getting my master's degree. Because at the time that I was getting my master's degree, I was a counselor in training, but I was also the liaison between the Department of Corrections and the treatment center that I worked in. So I was working like 40, 50 hours a week. I was driving all over the state of Indiana doing, you know, like, evaluations and assessments in detention centers. And I was getting my master's degree. I had an internship at that time. Like, my internship, well, my first year was, I was a school social worker with a team of 10 other people. And I was in an elementary school. My second year, I was in the treatment center that I worked at. And so imagine being in that treatment center 40 hours a week plus working, 40 hours a week for an internship, 80 plus hours a week in the treatment center that I was working in. It was a lot. And I was in a relationship, and I was sharing an apartment with my best friend at the time, and I never had any free time to myself. And I was also, that was the point that I was, like, running and working out. I mean, I just didn't have any free time. And I remember going over there and just doing my best to be, like, you know, the best son that I could possibly be, you know, and, like, it's interesting, like, I've been at times like that in my life before, and I'm sure there's some people out there like it, where you try everything you can to be the best version of yourself that you can possibly be, and you just keep on being beat down and beat down and beat down, and at some point, it's just kind of like, you want to say, well, screw it then, like, what's the point, right? But you can't, because it's for you. You have to remember that, you know? And, that was a point in my life when I really was, oh my God, these scooters on the side of the road just crack me up. They're everywhere. I think that's when, you know, like, you have to realize that, you know, this journey that you're in is with yourself, not with anybody else. And they're just really side characters in your story. And you have to continue to do the best that you can do. And it's not a comparison study to anybody else, and it's not what other people think and whatever. But I remember at that time I was like, you know, I was going to meetings, and I'm working 50 hours a week, and I'm like in classes so many hours a week, and I have this internship and this relationship, and I'm just like, I'm like running every day and working out, and I'm just like working so hard to be like this best person, you know, that I can possibly be. And you know, having come from this person that was like a street addict, you know, and I think on some level felt like I had something to prove to myself. I don't know, but I remember my mom looking at me and being like, well, I never get to see you and whatever. And I thought, I am so drained. Like, I cannot have like one more person pulling at me. And I looked at her and I said, you know what? I'm not responsible for your happiness. And it like came out of my mouth and I was like, what did I just say? And she looked at me and she goes, what did you say to me? And I said, ouch, because the camera fell. No, I looked at her and I said, I'm not responsible for your happiness. And she goes, do I make you feel that way? And I said, yeah. I go, you do. Like right now, you know you are. And I'm a believer that nobody else makes me feel a certain way. Like, you know, nobody else is responsible for my feelings. I own my feelings. But, you know, back then, as a result of our relationship, that was how I felt, you know? That like I was responsible for her happiness. Like if I wasn't there and that was toxic to me at the time. Like that was not healthy to me at the time. That my need to take care of my mother's happiness was standing in the way of A, my own happiness, and B, was standing in the way of A, my own happiness, and B, me achieving my dreams and goals. Like no. Like that's when a parent should be happy for you, you know? And she was, like, she totally was. But at the same time, you know, it was like my mom had put so much of her happiness in her life in me that she couldn't see outside of that. And only when, I think, after that, like, because she felt so bad about that, you know? And there were times, too, that, like, my mom would get so down, like, she never... Okay, this camera just keeps on sliding. I got, like, another minute, and then it slid again. Okay. But anyway, like one of the things, like my mom got to a very, very low part at one point. I think it was about 2 or 3 years sober. And we really got into it. And I think this was actually kind of like a turning point for her, you know? But I remember we were standing in her living room and I was like, I don't remember like the whole conversation, but it was the tail end of the conversation. And, you know, like, let me just say, we didn't get to a point in our relationship where I was standing there looking at her saying, I'm not responsible for your happiness, like, overnight. Like, that was not, she made me feel like that one time. Like, that was, I mean, when I talk about that being a toxic part of our relationship, like, my mother consistently guilt-tripped me over the course of my life. You know, that I was an only child, and she didn't have a lot in her life, and it was always about, you know, things that she wasn't happy and whatever. And I will say that her mental health issues, like, improved 80 to 90% when she got sober. But at the same time, like, she still suffered from depression and things like severe depression, you know? So anyway, I remember standing there with her and, you know, in the living room, and she just was kind of like, she was just complaining a lot, and she was like, I'm just not happy, and, you know, I don't know, and at the time, like, she was going to meetings, but she wasn't, like, really active in a 12-step program, and I think this was the turnaround for her. Like, I really think this is where things completely changed for her, because I think that she had felt enough pain, and she was like, I've got to have it in a different way, you know, and, like, that was, like, very much for me, like, when I came back into the rooms of recovery, you know, was that, like, I had no emotional sobriety. I had been in so much pain that, like, when I came back in, I was willing to do whatever it took. You tell me what to do to make me feel better. You tell me what to do to have a happy life. You tell me what to do to be happy. I will do it, because I'm so tired of living this way. And I think that's kind of where she was, too. And I remember we were standing there in the living room, and it was right as I was getting ready to leave. And she was like, you know, I wish you know, I saw you more often. I'm just, you know, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I was happier when I was drinking. And I looked at her and I'm like, I go, what are you talking about? I don't know. Sometimes, you know, and you know, and the thing is like, I look back on that now and it's like, I didn't really ever, and I don't know if she did, like, I remember talking to her a couple times about it. But I don't really remember ever, like, entertaining the thought that, like, what would I do if my mom went back out there and started drinking again? You know, I thought a lot about it with Tanya in the last couple years, which, I mean, today she, you you know, doesn't appear to be at any risk for that. But like, you know, since I've lost friends of mine that have gone back out, I wonder, you know, what would happen if my best friend went back out there, you know, what would our relationship be like, you know, what would that, you know, I mean, I don't know, like driving around getting a fountain Coke and she tells me like, I don't know, when they were doing shots of tequila. I mean, it would be hard, you know, like for 22 years, that hasn't been the language of our friendship. So, and that hasn't been, you know, we've been, you know, siblings in sobriety. So I don't know what that would be like, you know what I mean? Like, and I think that scares me, but I don't worry about it, you know, especially when, you know, we're driving around talking about sobriety. It is so windy out tonight. And, you know, we just went to a meeting tonight, but I didn't think much about it with my mom either, you know, like I didn't think about it, but I think a few times that I would think about it, like what that would look like. My mom's drinking was her alcoholism was so toxic to my life and to our relationship that had she chosen to go back to drinking again, I couldn't have had a relationship with her. I just couldn't. And not, especially not at that point in my life where I had gotten so healthy on my own, you know, that I was sober and I was working steps and I was doing inventory. I don't know, like, I think I could have had empathy for her, but I wouldn't have felt sorry for her to the point where I would have, like, wanted to be around it. And I sure as shit wouldn't have been, I mean, if I'm busting my ass trying to be the best version of myself that I can be, and you've resorted back to this, you know, especially the child of an alcoholic, her child of an alcoholic, I think there probably would have been a lot of resentment. Thank God I never had to deal with this. I just have to say, like, had a lot of friends of mine that have gone, you know, had family members that go in and out, and I think it's difficult. I think, like, you know what I mean, you have feelings, they have feelings, it's a disease, but, you know, that doesn't mean it's an excuse, and, you know, it's hard, and, thank God I never had to go there. I don't know. You know, I think, like, my mom made it pretty clear to me, how she would have felt if I had gone back out. I mean, I just can't even imagine. That would have been, I would never have heard the end of it, just period, end of story. Because what I'm going to say is that, like, at this point, I think it must have been about 2.5 years, my mom, after this, like, drastically after this, she, like, got a new sponsor, and I think it was around that time, it was early on that she got a new sponsor, because her sponsor that I met at her funeral was the sponsor that she had, like, the majority of her recovery. And she started going to different meetings. She, like, started getting really, really involved in a 12-step program. And, like, in a way that I hadn't seen her before. You know, before she was just kind of a seat filler. And what I mean by that is that she would go to meetings and she would sit. And, I mean, I didn't see her at meetings, but she would tell me this. She'd be like, well, I just don't share a whole lot about my personal story. You know, I don't know if I trust people and whatever. And 2 years of, like, sitting there not really, like, doing a whole lot, you know, is sad. And I think, like, you know, I was talking to a friend of mine about this tonight, like, there are people that are dying in the rooms of 12-step programs, okay? I mean, like, you know, one of the misconceptions that I think a lot of times we give people that are in 12-step programs that we give to the outside world is that you come into, like, you know, a 12-step program and your, like, life has changed like that. That is not the case, okay? I mean, it just isn't. And sometimes things get worse before they get better. And there's a lot of pain. And I think, you know, one of the things that I was always taught early on was to tell on myself in the rooms of recovery, like, wherever I'm at, to share where I'm at. Like, if I'm going through some shit, like, come to, you know, my meeting and share what I'm going through and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I do, like, I really do. Like, at my home group, those people know about my life. They just do, you know, and I love that, you know, and, but I think, like, there are people that are dying in the rooms of recovery because they're not. And I was one of those people, you know, like, before I stopped coming to meetings for 4 years, I would come to meetings, and I was talking about this tonight, because this meeting that I go to now used to be this union hall, and we split into groups, and I would always sit in the twos, and I would lean up against this desk, my chair back, and it would come to me, and I would either pass, or I would share what I thought sounded really good that somebody else had said, like 3 weeks previous to that. I just basically, you know, say what they had said, because I didn't really know, and I didn't trust my own thinking, you know. When I came back in, it was a different story. And, you know, I heard this lead. It was like one of my very first days back. So a speaker lead is like when somebody's like telling their story. And I heard this speaker lead. There's a great website, and it's called XA-speakers.org. And it has every 12-step program in the world, all the speakers from it, like circuit speakers that go around and speak. There's just amazing speakers on there. From Al-Anon, a lot of people ask me about Al-Anon. There's Al-Anon on there. There's Nar-Anon on there. There's everything you can imagine. So anyway, I was listening to one of these leads, and this woman shared that, and this is what I'm talking about, people dying in the rooms of recovery. And she said that she had been going back to meetings, and, you know, people would talk about honesty, and how important honesty was. Oh my God, the camera slid again, you guys. Okay. So anyway, I was listening to this woman's lead, and, she was talking, it's like so wobbly tonight. I don't know what the problem is. And she was talking about like the importance of honesty. And, you know, like if you've ever been to a 12-step meeting before, you've ever, you know, been in like the rooms of recovery, you know that like the principle of honesty is like honesty. Like it is what is like preached. Like it is so important to sobriety, right? And, she was in there and she was talking about like what the principle meant to her of honesty, and that yes, it's important to be, you know, honest about your addiction to yourself and to your higher power and to those people around you. And yes, it's important to be honest about facts in your life. But above and beyond that, one of the things that she had never really thought about was being honest about where you are at in your life, right? And she said, you know, I was coming to meetings every day and I was like dying. Like I just was not in a good space. I was sad and I was, you know, miserable and on and on and on. I just realized I hadn't even finished the story about my mom. But anyway, and she said, I just realized, you know, that I was like sad and I was miserable and I was like not any happier like in the rooms of recovery than I was when I was out there drinking. This is why I remember this, because of my mom. But anyway, and she said, so she was at a meeting and this woman came up to her that she would talk to every day and said like, hey, how are you doing? And that day, for some reason, she looked at this woman and she said, you know, I'm not doing very good. Like, I'm not okay. And, like, that was the day that, like, everything changed for her. Like, everything changed for her. Okay, that is almost identical to my story. Like, when I heard that, when I came back in, I was like, I will always be talking about where I'm at in the rooms of recovery. Because my life is not a luxury. You know what I mean? My life is a gift. And I guard it preciously. And, there are people that don't know how to talk about where they're at emotionally. And a lot of people, some of you out there are watching this and you're like, but I don't know how to share where I'm at emotionally. I don't have anybody to share that with emotionally, you know, but find somebody, you know, like go to a support network, get a counselor, you know, get a life coach. I don't know, like go join something, because you have to have somebody to talk to about what's going on. And you have to be able to look at somebody and say, I'm not okay. Like, I'm just not doing okay today, you know? And I think, like, that doesn't have to mean that, like, we're ready to be done from this earth. But at the same time, you know, like, I can, like, honest to God, like, I can have a day where I'm not doing okay, and then I can call up Tanya and talk to her, and I get off the phone, and I'm doing okay. You know what I mean? Like, just the fact that I've gotten it out and I've talked about it, I'm doing okay. And I think that that's important, you know? I think loneliness is one of the things that we don't talk enough about in this world. People that have nobody, people that are very lonely and go in and out every day. I think it's tragic. Don't ever give up, because the next day you wake up might be the day you meet the greatest friends you've ever had. Some of my loneliest parts of my life, I've turned around and, you know, just in the last year, you know, like, towards the tail end of the year, I met, you know, two people that I have become like just such dear friends to me that I talk to, you know, like on a daily basis, you know, one several times a day, and never like, you know, ever, you never know, you know, like I've talked about this before. One of them is my, you know, my BookTube assistant, president, founder, whatever, Mel. Like I never would have imagined, you know, like I can remember literally sitting there and her being like, you know, like, if you make me an administrator of your group, like, I can do this stuff easier for you and whatever. And I literally can, she doesn't even know this, we haven't talked about this, but I can remember sitting there thinking to myself, you're so fearful of trusting people because every time you do, you get screwed. But you're gonna have to trust somebody again. You're gonna have to learn that not everybody out there is gonna screw you over. You know? There's a lot of hurtful people out there in the world. But it doesn't mean that everybody's going to be that, you know? And I'm so thankful I trusted her. She's become one of the dearest friends I've ever had, you know? And she's fantastic. I think my husband's so sick and tired of hearing about her. My other friend has, you know, that I made recently, I mean, I think she saved my life in a way that she doesn't even know it. You know what I mean? It takes just one person believing in you, you know, for you to start believing in yourself a little bit. And I think like that's all we need sometimes is a, you know, one cheerleader team kind of thing, you know. But I remember standing there in the living room with my mom, and my mom said, you know, I'm not any happier now than I was when I was drinking and whatever. And I think I got so scared in that moment because I thought, well, is this her? Like, is she going to go back out and start drinking again? You know, I was terrified. I was like afraid. Like, well, what does that mean? Is like she going to go back out and start drinking again? And I looked at her and I go, what are you talking about? And she goes, I'm just not happy. Like, it's like, this isn't making, like, my life isn't any better, you know? And, you know, I have to say that, like, what I know today, if you're in sobriety or recovery, you're going to totally understand what I say. If you don't, if you're not, I may offend a few people. Okay, I just want to say that before I get into what I'm about to say. Because if you've been affected by addiction on a personal level and yet you don't know a lot about recovery, I'm probably going to offend you, okay? Recovery is simple. Recovery and sobriety are very, very simple. If you do what you are told to do, it works. It's just that simple, okay? I mean, there's even like, you know, a saying that like, you know, it's for, sobriety is for, you know, it's a simple solution for complex people, you know, and sometimes the simplest people are the ones that get it the easiest. Hand to God, it's the truth, okay? The rest of us are out there You guys, this stupid camera has slid about 10 times tonight, but I'm on that cobblestone road, so I kind of expected it to happen. But, you know, like, it's a simple program for complex people, like I was saying. But anyway, there's even like a slogan, and, this isn't the offensive part, but it could be. Okay, please do not slide. But it's rationalization, justification, and masturbation. All three, you're just screwing yourself. And, you know, it's like interesting, like when you look at that, you know, that like, we talk about how difficult sobriety is, okay? It really isn't. And I'm not saying that like, I mean, I was sitting, you know, tonight, and I was listening to a friend of mine share, and like, I was thinking to myself, like, and I know this person's story rather well, and I was thinking to myself, like, it's interesting what we all deem our bottoms, because I was kind of bottom of the barrel. Like, I mean, true story. Like, my life was pretty much shit at the end. Like, I'm surprised I'm even here. You know what I mean? you know, let's just sum it up in a 30-second, you know, wrap up. You know what I mean? Like, I was drinking a 5.5 of Jack Daniels a day. I was drinking several 40s. You know, I was smoking weed all day long. I was eating Vicodin all day long. I was smoking crack cocaine. I was, you know, snorting cocaine. I was using any other drugs that anybody would give me. And on top of that, I was finding myself in places that I didn't know how I had gotten there. I was blacking out every time I drank, which was every day. I had no idea how I got home or how I got to sleep most nights. I was going to drug dealers' houses on several occasions where they were making me do funny little things like put a gun in my mouth and make me simulate oral sex on a gun that I found out was loaded. And any of these links that I would go to get drugs and alcohol, how I am still sitting here right now is beyond me, okay? And I was sitting there tonight and I thought, you know, like, but I made it somehow. And I can remember that, like, early sobriety was so hard, you know, like, it was, and the offensive part is me saying that it's simple, okay? And, you know, I'm gonna explain to you what I mean by that in just a second, but, like, I remember early sobriety, what was hard wasn't getting through it. I mean, it was, like, the cravings were so treacherous, right? But, like, I just did what I was told, you know? I was told, pick up the damn phone, and I picked up the damn phone and I called people. I did what I was told, you know? Whenever I did what I was told, things worked out for me. Whenever I didn't do what I was told, I was talking about this today on my Peter Mon channel because I was talking about John Hill, Jaclyn Hill's ex, and I was saying, you know, that he's like in this relationship right away, and people are like, I'm so happy that you're in this relationship and whatever. I was told in my first year of sobriety we were not to get in relationships. I've talked about this on here on many, many occasions, and how I got into a relationship my first week out of treatment, and after that I got into one like 2 months later. You know what? I don't pass judgment on him whatsoever. We all want to be loved, right? And I thought me being validated by somebody else liking me was going to make me feel better about myself. And what I realized over time was that I needed to fix myself. I needed to take care of myself. I didn't have any business being in any relationship with anybody and bringing them into any much of my drama or any of my crap that was going on. I didn't have any business doing that. That wasn't fair to them, and it sure as shit wasn't fair to myself. I deserved to take that time to myself, you know? But early sobriety, like, if you just do what you're told, it really is not that hard. It really isn't. And one of the things I've learned over time, like, this is going back to what, like, with my mom, and this is probably the part that's going to be a little offensive, maybe, to some people that don't understand, is that, like, you know, today, when I look at somebody and they're like, it's no better now than it was when I was drinking, the first thing I always ask myself is, what are they not doing that they're being told to do? Like, because at that point, with my mom, she didn't like her sponsor. She wasn't calling her sponsor on a regular basis. She wasn't working steps. She was a seat filler at meetings, which means she would go to meetings and she wouldn't talk. She'd share that with me. She'd say, I don't really share a whole lot when I go to meetings. She wouldn't talk to people after meetings. She wasn't active. She wasn't doing service work. She wasn't sponsoring anybody. She was dying in the rooms of recovery. She wasn't doing anything. You know, it's just... it's not enough to just show up to a meeting and expect that your life is going to change. You have to put action to it. You know what I mean? So today, when I hear people say, oh, those programs don't work, or, you know, whatever, like, what I always think to myself is, well, what didn't you do that you were told to do? Because they do work. They absolutely save the lives of millions of people, including my own. And I'm not somebody that's easily, you know, buys into cult mentality or brainwashing or religiosity. So that shit wasn't going to work on me, which means that it's much deeper than that. And, you know, the thing is, you got to do what you're told. And after that, like, I looked at my mom that day, and I'll never forget this, because I said to her, I said, well, why don't you get a different sponsor? Why don't you go to different meetings? Well, you think it's as simple as that, blah, blah, blah. I go, yeah, I really do think, Mom, it is simple as that. And I'm sitting there, standing there, like, fighting for her sobriety, right? Because I'm terrified if my mom goes back out there. And, like, everything I said to her, she had an excuse for, right? She was justifying, she was rationalizing, you know, she was intellectualizing. Everything she had an excuse for me for. Well, you know, like, I don't know, I just don't relate to these people, you know? Well, go find some people that you do relate to. Well, I don't know where that would be, you know? Or go get another sponsor. Well, I mean, I'm not going to call my new sponsor either. You know, maybe you need to do inventory again, you know? Like, well, it didn't really work the first time, but maybe I left some things, you know? So finally, frustrated, I looked at her. I'll never forget this. And I looked at her and I said to her, I go, then why don't you just go back out and fucking drink? Because if you're not any happier sober, then go drink. Ah, did you just say that to me? I go, you're the one telling me that you're not happy sober. I said, I'm happy today sober. Not always, not every day. Not every day of my life, you know, to this day is filled with bliss. It just isn't. I'm speaking for myself now. I'm not like him. But, you know, that's what I said to her. I'm not happy every day, but yeah, I'm happy most days. God, I can't believe that you would talk to your mother that way. You know, that's why we never took each other's inventory. That's why we never, and that means that, like, we never told each other what to do with our programs. I said, you know what? I said, you fix you and do what you need to do. I'm gonna fix me. And I left. And we didn't talk to each other for like a month or two. Like, I mean, you know, we talked on the phone, but I didn't see her. I didn't go out of my way to go see her. You know, I thought, I'm not being taken down with the misery boat. I'm just not. Like, I'm just not being taken down with all of that. And, you know, over the next 6 months, like, things started changing. And, like, then my mother became this person that was always known to do service work, and she was always active, and everywhere I went, like, people, you know, people knew who she was. And even after my mom passed away, people would be like, oh my God, was that your mother, like so-and-so? And I'd be like, yeah. And they're like, oh my God, like, oh, I loved your mother. I didn't even connect the two of you, you know? And I remember going to, my mom went to this meeting on Thursday nights, and a friend of mine, she and I went to this meeting. God, how long ago was this? I'm trying to think of how long my friend has sober, because it was like the end of her first year. I don't know, about 5 or 6 years ago, I bet. And we went to this meeting one night. It was funny because there's like these two huge churches across from each other. If you live in Indianapolis and you're sober, you'll know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so there's these two churches across from each other, and they're both big, right? And so when we had like the meeting on our like map, you know, like Google Maps, we were trying to find it. Well, it just showed us the road. It didn't show us like, you know, like what side of the road. So we went to the church, and we go around all the way, and I will never forget, like, we went in, and there was like a lot of stuff going on. You know, these like churches, like, you guys probably have people belong to them. These big churches have like a lot of shit going on during the week, you know what I mean? So she and I go in there, and I'll never forget, we like walk in, and literally like the number on the meeting is like the same number, and the churches literally too are like almost like, I'm trying to like think of like make up a name. Like if it was like, you know, like New Christian Methodist Church or New Christian Lutheran Church. It's like that, okay? They're almost like that close, and they're right across the street from each other. And so the number that we were supposed to go to was like, we went to it, but on the book, it said it was in the back of the meeting, or in the back of the church. And this one was like, this number, it was like 2A or something, was right in the front, I forgot about this, was right in the front of the church. So we go in, and we go into this 2A, and we're sitting there, right? Oh, sorry. We're just sitting there, and we're just like, and there's like, I don't know, like 8 people sitting in the room, and like everybody's coming in, they're like, they are like, I have no idea to this day what the support network, the support group was. I have no idea what it was. This reminds me so much of Fight Club, like the beginning of it, but it was a much more happy looking space. But anyway, these people came in, like it was the same maybe like 8 or 10 people every week, and they just like stared a hole through us. I wish she was here so I could tell this story with her. It's so funny. But anyway, and we're just like sitting there with like, you know, like, these people are so nice. Like, this is a new meeting. I'm really, really excited, right? And so this woman comes in. She's like in charge of the group or whatever. And she said, and she thought we were a couple, first of all. And she goes, are you guys new? And we're like, yeah. And like my friend goes, you know, we're here for the such and such 12-step meeting. And she goes, oh, well, that's across the street at the other church. We're like, oh, okay. We kindly got up and grabbed our coats and walked out. Oh my God, we like laughing so hard over that. But anyway, so we went to the other church, and we went into that meeting, and we were sitting in there, and like my friend picked the meeting, and like when you go to like meeting books, they have like the name of the meeting. So the meeting might be called something like, you know, best days of my life. They always have like some kind of corny name to them, right? Which usually has something to do with like recovery. So I'm like trying to like turn slowly so I don't, like, my camera doesn't slide yet again. But anyway, they always have something to do with recovery. It is so hot in here, you guys. And so like, I knew that this was one of my mom's, like, regular meetings, like, when we walked in there. But, like, you know, it had been at that point, like, 3 or 4 years since she had passed, well, this would have been 08. Like, I mean, it had been, like, 5 years since she had passed away, you know? And so we're sitting in there, and somebody's talking, and they're like, well, like so-and-so used to say, you know, blah, blah. I'm like, they are quoting my mother, like, true story. And I, like, lost it, and I started sobbing. And when it came to me, I said, you know, like, my mom used to come to this meeting regularly, and she was so-and-so, and this was one of her regular meetings. And people were like, you know, and, like, after the meeting, people came up to me, and they were like, I knew your mother. Like, she talked about you all the time. She loved you so much. She was so proud of your sobriety. You know, like, she would talk about your story, about how you guys have been sober together. To this day, I still have people that come up to me that are like, your mother was my first sponsor. Like, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for her. You know, and so the legacy lives on. And, but I think that my mom had to go through enough pain of thinking it's not going to get any better, but I'm not willing to go back out there and drink again and try. I'm too scared of that. So I better do everything I can to bust my ass to feel better now. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, and yet that goes back again to that whole idea of being the best version of ourselves that we can be on a daily basis, you know? Like, it isn't about somebody else's journey. It isn't about my sobriety compared to somebody else's sobriety. It isn't about what sponsor do they have, what step are they working on, how great. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with how do I feel in my heart of hearts, how honest with myself and others am I being, you know, who am I, like, when nobody's looking? Who am I? Ask my husband, ask my best friend, ask my family. Ask them who I am, you know? Because those are the people that are directly affected by who I am. And that air feels good, but it is cold outside. Oh, it's now 26 degrees. Can you hear that my voice, the more I talk, like, I lose it more? It was interesting because, like, I filmed a bunch of videos today, and by the end, like, when I picked up Tanya, she goes, your cough is, like, still not going away. And I said, I think it's because, like, when I woke up this morning, I was okay. And as I started talking more and more, my voice got raspier, and I started coughing a little bit. But I think, like, you know, how did I get here from talking about setting boundaries and limits with toxic family members? I hope I never have to figure out what I'm going to do if my closest friend goes back out there. And I hope she never has to figure that out with me, you know? And I don't believe that we will have to. I think that the trick to setting boundaries with toxic family members is really about setting boundaries within yourself. I don't think it's about setting boundaries with them. I don't think it's about telling them, although at times I did, you know, when my mom was drinking, about, like, what I wasn't going to do. But that was really for me, needing to hear that out loud. I don't know that in retrospect I maybe would have done it the same way. I think me telling my mom, you know, when I was, like, in treatment, that I couldn't be around people that were drinking and using, and that included her. I think maybe indirectly I was really wanting her to get sober, and I thought that that would do something, you know, I don't know. My higher power heard my prayers, but had a different plan for her than me being involved in that. But, you know, maybe not really. I mean, I look back, you guys, on our life before that, and I just think, like, how did we even coexist together, like, without sobriety? Like, I mean, I guess that would be one of the first questions I'd ask anybody that says that about a toxic family member is there addiction involved? You know, like, if you ask me how toxic our relationship out of 100% would be, my mom and I, before we got sober, I would have said a 98.9. And, you know, and the other 1.2% was maybe on, like, Christmas Eve for an hour, you know, when neither one of us was blitzed yet. And, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. And it's like, how toxic was your relationship on a scale of 1 to 100%? Like, once you guys both got sober and were working the steps in a program? 15%? I mean, that says a lot for sobriety, doesn't it? That all that toxicity was gone once we stopped using. Like, how much of that toxicity was about our using? That's really sad, you know? I guess I'd never really thought of it that way before. But I think, like, you know, the boundary that you set isn't really... You don't have to say to the person, okay, here's the boundary I'm going to set. You're toxic in my life. I can't have you around. Here's the boundary. You don't have to say that, right? You know what I mean? Like, you can say to yourself, like, here's what I'm going to do. Like, I need to have peace of mind in my life. Like, let's say if it's somebody that, like, calls you a lot and just, right? You can say, okay, after 6 o'clock, I'm not taking their phone calls. You know, and if they get upset about it, you can just say, hey, listen, you know, like, it's family night after 6 o'clock. I don't take phone calls from anybody after 6 o'clock, you know? And, you know, or, like, I'm only going to see them at holidays unless they really, really need me. And that means an emergency where I have to take them to the hospital. You have to define it, you know? And, you know, just because you set boundaries with yourself doesn't mean, like I said, you have to tell that person what the boundary is, A. But B, it also doesn't mean that that boundary can't change. Like, just because you set a boundary doesn't mean that 6 months down the road, you can't change that boundary. You know, but I do think, like, for me, boundaries only ever mean anything when I choose to stick to them. You know what I mean? You know, you know, I think it's the same thing with boundaries. It's like, are you going to stick to your boundaries, you know, like, through and through? Like, if you're going to set a boundary and, you know, the boundary is going to be, okay, I'm not going to take, you know, Aunt Judy Sue's phone calls after 6 o'clock because she just rants and raves, and I'm on the phone with her for 2 hours, and I don't get the kids to bed on time, and then I'm just chaotic in my head and I can't rest. Okay, that's not healthy for you, so Aunt Judy Sue isn't doing you any good, right? That phone conversation maybe needs to be reserved once a month, okay, or once a week. And over time, Judy Sue will understand, and she'll probably say to you, oh my God, you don't take my calls the way that you used to, you know? And then you might have to have the conversation and say, well, Aunt Judy Sue, I love you, but, like, I've got so much stuff going on in the evenings, you know? Like, I just can't have that same conversation every night over and over and over again. Sometimes a boundary is called being direct with somebody, and nicely, compassionately, but just to be like, hey, listen, I love you. I just can't talk on the phone for 3 hours every night about, you know, like, you know, how upset that everybody at the nursing home treats you. You know, I just can't, you know what I mean? I'll tell you something else too. You want to finish conversations real quick, bring up gratitude to people that are complaining a lot. Well, they won't be calling you a whole lot anymore, let me tell you that. Like, the people in my life that, you know, like, they'll go on and on and on complaining, and finally I'll be like, you know, have you ever thought about making a gratitude list or trying some, I mean, you got a lot to be grateful for in your life. Oh, you don't understand. You're probably right. I probably don't understand. You know, you're probably right. Anyway, you might try a gratitude list. It works for me. You know, when I'm feeling, you know, sorrowful for myself, when I, you know, whip out a pad and I start, you know, doing some inventory and on gratitude in my life. Oh, it wouldn't work. Well, it probably wouldn't, but you might want to try it. They don't call anymore. They just don't call anymore. And if they do, I'll say, how'd that gratitude list go? You know what I mean? Like, because that's what works for me when people say that shit to me in my life, you know? Be grateful for what you have. I don't know. I think, you know, it's hard. I think the setting of boundaries, like I said, is within yourself. You know, when I look back on, like, my relationship with my mom and the toxic periods of my relationship with her, you know, and other toxic relationships I've had with other family members or, you know, even people in my life, like, I had to have pretty firm boundaries in my mind of how I was going to act in certain situations, if that makes sense. You know, but I didn't always have to vocalize that to the other person. I just had to make sure I followed through with that. And if I didn't, then I had to ask myself, you know, and a lot of times, like, have that conversation with my sponsor or have that conversation with, you know, a support network person. But I had to ask myself, like, you know, why am I not able to stick to that boundary? Is it because of guilt? Is it because I feel bad? Like, what's going on inside of me that I can't stick to that boundary, right? Because the reality is this: if you have a toxic family member in your life, okay, and you're asking, how do I set boundaries with them? What you're really saying is, I love this person enough that I want them in my life, but I don't want them on this condition. Like, I don't want our relationship to be like this. But if you start setting limits and boundaries with somebody that is toxic or chaotic, over time, they will get used to your boundaries and they will respect those boundaries. They may not even ever notice them or talk about them out loud, but they will start respecting them over time. They'll be forced to, because you won't be around if they don't. And your relationship will change, and that person will change, and you'll be able to have the healthy relationship with that person that you want. And isn't that what we want? You know what I mean? And if they don't change over time, then what you have to realize is maybe this is a person I don't need in my life because they don't respect me. You know, and we all deserve to be respected. So I think that's like the second part of that, you know, is that you give it some time. Like, and it may take a year or two, you know what I mean? If Aunt Judy Sue is 85 years old, the reality is it's probably not going to change. Aunt Judy Sue is probably set in her ways, and then maybe we need to work on some acceptance of that toxicity, and then maybe we need to, I think my library is building the second floor, and then what we need to do is we need to say, okay, like, this is the limited relationship that I'm willing to have with her because I just can't do it all the time. But if they're younger and we think that there's a possibility that could change, you know, and you can always go to counseling with that person too, you know. We want to talk about couples counseling, we want to talk about marriage counseling, but like, what about like, you know, a mother and a daughter going to counseling? I think that would be fantastic, you know, like, damn. I think that would have saved my mom and I back in the day once we in early sobriety, you know. I have no idea how long this vlog has gone, but the battery is flashing now and it just stopped. But I have no idea like how much that would have sped things up for my mom and I to go to counseling back in the day, you know. And we both, I think, would have gotten a lot out of it. So anyway, I mean, there's a lot of things you guys can do. Interesting topic, though. God, I've been all over the place tonight, haven't I? All right, you guys, listen. If the battery is running short, that means I've been talking for a lot longer than I thought I have. And I'm looking at the clock, and it says like an hour and 15 minutes, I think. Hour and 20 minutes? I don't know. So anyway, that I've been talking, just based on the time. But, yeah, that was kind of a rambly Sue. What was that song back in the day? Anyway, I love you guys. I hope you are having a fantastic Wednesday, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.